So, as we've talked about, we have been going through over the course of the last, this is week number 4 in this series, and we've been talking about getting to know God and knowing Him not just from a knowledge perspective, but knowing Him in relationship. And it makes such a difference to have that relationship because it gives a different perspective. You know, sometimes you might look from the outside looking in and wonder, why did those parents make that decision with their child? And it's hard from the outside looking in to really understand the depths of what is taking place. But as you have opportunity to be able to experience that in your own life, we do understand that whenever you experience that in your own life, you understand what it's like to have to make decisions for your children. I looked a whole lot better there for just a few seconds. Amen, right? You understand the difficulties in making decisions when it comes to your children. You understand the difficulty when it comes to making decisions when it comes to your finances. You understand the difficulty as it relates to making decisions whenever it comes to your employment and various things like that. And so sometimes we look at things in kind of a vacuum and you say, I don't really understand that. And God says, listen, I see the big picture. We are limited by our vision, by our view. And I want you to picture this. Let's say you're walking up to a fence, and that fence has a hole in it, and you're able to see out. Now, if you're able to see out of that hole, and I'm just going to do this right now. In fact, if you don't mind, just make yourself a little hole. Are you able to close one eye? Because whenever you close one eye, then you're limited to only seeing through that. If I go like this, I can see the back two, I can see this entire middle, and actually I can't. I'm sorry, I can't see you if I go like this. It's a very limited vision, isn't it? And I want you to understand that as we look at life, we see kind of like this. And God sees like this. And there's a big difference, isn't there? Now here's the tough thing. As I was younger, and as I grow more and more, and age seems to help with this, but age doesn't fix everything. It's a continual looking to God in His Word and talking to Him in prayer that has allowed, and I trust this is the same for you, it has allowed me for many years, I thought that this was the true picture of reality. I thought this is what really was taking place. And you understand that if you look like this for so long, you come to realize you're missing a lot. You come to realize that your view is very, very limited. And I've come to that point in my life, and I'm still growing in my faith, but I've come to the point in my life where I realize, you've heard me say this so many times in this series, I don't know what's best. I don't have the full picture. I am not God. And as God continues to grow my faith, I have more and more come to the understanding that, listen, I just put my life in your hands, and whatever you want to do, God, that's okay by me. That's tough sometimes, though. I just want to be honest with you, because there are some things that happen in life that I don't like. There are some things that happen in our own life that we don't like. And there are things in your life, I know, that you don't necessarily like. In fact, I would venture a guess that would say, if you were honest, if I was to ask how many of you over the course of the last 5 years have experienced things that you did not fully understand, chances are pretty good it would be a somewhat unanimous vote. Right? Let me just ask, because there's no harm in doing this. How many of you over the course of the last 5 years have experienced something in your life that you didn't fully understand God's plan for? All right. Okay, so we are all kind of in that same boat. Now, understanding that, let me ask this question. Whenever you went through that thing that you didn't fully understand God's plan for, did you have a plan that you wanted to have happen? How many of you had a plan? You say, when I experienced that, I had something that I was, okay, so a good number of you. Now, what we come to understand is that our plan does not always line up with God's plan. And we've said this a number of times, God's plan is best. God's plan is best. And so we have gone through this series, and we're trying to begin to understand God in relationship to a greater degree, to a fuller level. And so we've already talked about this a little bit. We combine the names of God, the attributes of God in the context of a relationship. And Jenny earlier testified to how the powerful God who sees was at work in their family's life. And in addition to that, Jehovah Rapha, the Lord is present to heal and can make bitter situations sweet. And so she was able to testify that her family has experienced God in both of those ways. And the truth of the matter is this: many of you here today could come up here and testify to that I have experienced God providing healing. What I also know is true is that some of you are sitting there today saying, I want God to heal. And it might be a family member, it might be a friend, and you might be saying, I am begging God, like, God, I want to experience you as the God who heals. I want to know that's true in my life. I want to be able, in 6 months from now, in a year from now, in 3 days from now, whatever it is, I want to be able to stand on that stage. I mean, if you're afraid of standing in front of people, forget that part of it. But I want to be able to stand and be able to say, I have experienced Jehovah Rapha, the God who heals. And what I want to let you know is that while healing may not come in your timetable, God is the God who heals. And he can heal in every situation. I think I've told you guys this. I had a person I was really close to in Pennsylvania. And he got cancer. He had gotten cancer multiple times. And it came back, and he was convinced that God was going to heal him. And I still remember saying to him, you know, I don't claim to know the future, but I know this much. God will either heal you here, or he's going to heal you in eternity. I said, and if he chooses to heal you in eternity, which is the direction I think this is going, I want to let you know I'll rejoice over your healing when I get there. And he did. He went to be with the Lord. And it doesn't always just make things automatically better knowing that I'm going to get to see him completely healed one day, and like that Harry will be all right, and that he is all right. It doesn't just make everything better. And I know that looking around here, a number of you have experienced loss. And you want that family member to be here with you. And you might even be saying, like, why didn't God step in at this particular time to heal my loved one, whenever we hear testimony of him healing someone else? And I wanted to just be honest with you, I don't know all the answers to that. If you want a pastor who can tell you why God heals in one instance and why not in another, I am not that person. I am the one who can tell you, though, God knows every one of your deepest longings, your deepest hurts, and your deepest struggles. And he knows what's best. And you say, that's not the answer that I want. I'll be honest with you, it's not usually the answer I want either. But here's without question, we know that God is present to heal. And he has, and he will continue to provide healing. So we saw these two things. The one who can make bitter situations sweet, and the powerful God who sees us in our time of need. Had another lady who was going to testify this morning, and she slept in. She sent me a text message. She said, I'm sorry, but I slept in. She's like, I'm going to go to the Westwood campus today, but I'll be back next week, and like my testimony is still there and it's still growing. I'm like, it's all right. It's okay. So we're going to have another testimony this morning, and we'll continue to have testimonies throughout because I love to hear what God's been doing and has done in your life. Turn your Bibles, if you will, to Genesis chapter number 22. Genesis chapter number 22. Probably a fairly familiar story to a number of you, especially if you grew up going to Sunday school, children's church, whatever that might be. Genesis chapter number 22, we're going to see Abraham again. And we actually, throughout the course of this series, we saw him previously. And we're going to see him again here. Genesis 22, starting in verse number 1. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. And he said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will tell you about. And at this point, all of you are reading and saying, what? You want to what? And I get you. And let's just work through this, and then we'll talk about it here in just a minute. Early the next morning, I'm going to back up for just a second. All right, so God has just told him, listen, and I'm going to show you this slide later. I'm just going to kind of give it to you anyway. So God had told Abraham at the age of 75, I'm going to make a great nation out of you. We studied this a couple weeks ago. At the age of 86, Abraham was getting impatient. And so he and his wife, Sarah, they said, well, maybe what God meant is that, like, he's going to provide through someone else. And so Abraham married Hagar, their servant. And they had a child together, Ishmael. And they were thinking, okay, maybe this is it. And God's like, no, you're trying to, like, solve this yourselves. Ishmael is not the son of promise. And so that's actually where we saw Hagar out there in the desert by a spring, and God comes to her, and she says, God sees me. That he is El Rohe, the God who sees. So we saw that take place. That was the age of 86. Abraham at the age of 99, God comes to him again and says, I'm going to make a great nation out of you. At the age of 100, he finally has a son. That son's name is Isaac. God now comes to him and says, listen, I want you to go, and I want you to sacrifice your one and only son for me. And I know, like, just let us get through this and we'll back up and talk about it, because you're like, would God do that? Like, let's get through it and we'll talk about it. So he says, I want you to go. Now, if that was me, I am not waking up early. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, God has just said, listen, I want you to go sacrifice your son. And early the next morning, Abraham got up. I'm thinking, I'm not setting my alarm for that day. I don't want to wake up. I don't want to see this happen. But he is determined to follow God. He saddles his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place that God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Not only did he wake up early, but he now has traveled for 3 days to do something that I'm sure that he is not exactly wanting to do. He said to his servant, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. Now, check this out. Here's the faith that he had in God. It says, we will worship, talking about he and his son. We will worship, and then we will come back to you. We're going to see in just a moment. He had faith to understand that God had a plan and would provide. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. Now, you can start to see parallels between Isaac and Jesus, can't you? Whenever the wood is placed on Isaac to carry, you're reminded of, or at least I'm reminded of, how Jesus bore his cross. We're reminded of that, and it says he himself, talking about Isaac, carried that, and then Abraham carried the fire and the knife as the 2 of them went on together. Isaac spoke up, and he said to his father Abraham, Father? Yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And check this out again. Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place that God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there, arranged the wood on it, bound his son Isaac, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And you're saying, whoa. And I'm saying, whoa as well. You have to wonder if Abraham would have flashed back to the promises that God had made to him. You go to Genesis 12:2, and God had told him, I'm going to make you into a great nation. I'll bless you. You go to Genesis 15, verse 4, and he says, a son coming from your own body will be your heir. You go to Genesis 17, verse 4, and God says, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. And he has his one and only son there, and he's about to slay his own son. And you say, how could he even think about doing that? And we're going to go forward, and we're going to see that Abraham had already said, listen, we will worship, and then we will come back to you. And that God himself will provide a lamb. You see that he has faith that maybe even this morning, we don't completely understand. And I would dare to say that we in America have a fairly weak faith. We in America, we like to say that we trust God, but many times we trust ourselves more than we trust God. And I tell you what, I put myself in that category time and time and time again. I want to have strong faith. And I know that you look, I would imagine you look at a pastor and just think that, oh, a pastor, he's going to have faith to move mountains, whatever. Listen, I want to let you know I am no different than any one of you. I struggle with my faith sometimes. I don't always have the full confidence in God that I should have at all times. And if you think that makes me a hypocrite, I just want to let you know you're right there with me. And you might not be as honest about it as I am right now, but truth be told, we struggle with our faith, amen? We do at times. We struggle with having that full confidence in God that we should. And I know that we all want to have that faith. We desire to have that faith. And Abraham, he had stated a couple of times, they're on their way. Listen, we're gonna go worship and we're going to come back. Not like we're going to go worship, I'll be back later because I'm going to sacrifice my son. And he says also, God's going to provide a lamb. Now, we get to look forward into Hebrews chapter number 11 and understand more fully what was going on here. It says in Hebrews chapter number 11, if you know anything about Hebrews chapter number 11, Hebrews chapter number 11 is what they call the faith chapter, the hall of faith. And we read about Abraham in this hall of faith, and it says, by faith Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. Now, notice how that is worded. It doesn't say that Abraham, when he was tested, considered offering Isaac as a sacrifice. It says that he offered Isaac as a sacrifice. In Abraham's mind, it was as good as done. He was determined to do this, but check out what it said. He who had received the promises from God. Remember, we looked at the 3 different times. Genesis chapter number 12, Genesis chapter number 15, Genesis chapter number 17, when God said, I'm going to make you a great nation. He who had received the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, it's through Isaac, this one, that your offspring will be reckoned. So why would he do that? Here's why. Abraham reasoned that God could raise the dead. And figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. Abraham knew his life and Isaac's life, they were in God's hands from the beginning. How many of you in here have children? Okay. A good number of you. Those of you that don't have children, some of you are young, some of you are older. But we come to the point where we realize as parents, and most of you as parents in here today have probably come to the point where you realize this. You can't control the destiny of your children. I would imagine that if Jim and Jenny, in testimony earlier, if they could have controlled or could control the health of Michaela, you would have done that, right? Many of us come to a crisis point where we think we can control things we can't. It's a somewhat scary thing. I hear statistics often when it comes to the medical field and what percentage of Americans will deal with cancer and what percentage of Americans will deal with, and you just fill in the blank there. You come to the point where it's like, I'm going to be hit with that sometime. It might not be me personally, but it might be my mom, might be my dad, might be my brother, might be my son, might be my daughter, it might be an aunt, might be an uncle, but the truth of the matter is this, we're going to be hit with this sometime. And what kind of faith do we have in God? Do we have the faith that Abraham had that reason, listen, even if it doesn't go exactly as I want it to go, I trust that God is going to work this out according to his plan because he knows what's best. I have that faith in him. So we get a little bit better picture as we look to Hebrews chapter number 11. And for the third time, we're going to go back to verse number 10, where we realize he has his hand up. He takes the knife to slay his son, but the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, Abraham replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns, and he went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. The Hebrew word is Jehovah Jireh, or Yahweh Jireh. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. So Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah, the Lord is present. We saw that last week with Jehovah Rapha. And then Jireh also means to see or to provide. So the Lord is present to provide. And Abraham experienced that. God providing in ways that he couldn't have possibly imagined, but he had the faith to say, I trust that God is going to provide even when I can't see it. And I know that there are a number of us in here today that we can look at our own life right now and we might say, I don't see how God is going to provide for me emotionally the rest of this week. I don't see how God is going to provide it for me financially the rest of this week. I don't know how God is going to provide for me intellectually as I go to school. I don't know how God is going to provide for me. And then you just fill in that blank because it's different for every person in every situation. You just say, I don't know fully how God is going to provide, but I know my God. And that's where we need to be. We need to be to the place where we say, I don't know the answer, but I know my God. Because whenever we trust only for answers or whenever we trust only for solutions, we miss a big portion of what God has desired for us when it comes to faith. Because whenever we try to figure out the answers, whenever we try to provide the solutions, ultimately what we say many times over, and I've done this in my own life time and time and time again, is like, I know, God, intellectually that you can provide, but I'll just take care of it this time. And quite frankly, there was no way Abraham was going to take care of this. He wasn't going to be able to provide a ram in the thicket. But God can provide even when you see no way for him to provide. He can provide for you emotionally in ways that no one else can. Young people, I've seen it time and time again. Many times it's with young ladies, but also with guys as well. I spent over 12 years as a youth pastor, and I saw time and time again young ladies, and like I said, even sometimes young men, who tried to find their value, their provision for emotional stability in a guy. I've seen so many young ladies try to find that emotional satisfaction from a guy. I've seen guys try to find their worth and value in a girl. And let me just say, if you are feeling like you need someone in order to fulfill a longing in your heart, what you need is not a guy, and what you need is not a girl. I'm speaking to the teenagers right now. What you need is not a guy, it's not a girl. What you need to fill that deepest longing in your heart, I promise you there's only one thing, that is God. I would imagine there are adults in here who can testify that they spent a portion of their life, maybe a large portion of their life, trying to find value in something or someone other than God. And I want to let you know you never find full value, never find full satisfaction there. Only God can provide for your deepest needs. Only God. So Abraham saw God as Jehovah Jireh. Now we said we take the names of God, we combine them with the attributes of God, and quite frankly, I could have given a lot of attributes of God whenever it comes to Jehovah Jireh. I just wanted to put a couple of them here. God is love, and this love is not like superficial love. When the Bible talks about love, it talks about a few different types of love, but this is not like a sensual love. It is not a friendship type of love, and God has that friendship type of love for us. This is agape love, and you'll hear that word every once in a while. Love that is self-sacrificing, looking for the good of others. You also see that God is omnipotent, all-powerful. He can do the impossible. We can't make an animal appear. I mean, I know magicians make rabbits appear, but no, you guys know that. We can't do that kind of stuff. Only God can provide in ways that are impossible. Let's look. We've been walking through the Gospel of John. So what we've done is we've taken the Old Testament where we see the name of God. We've been walking through the Gospel of John and seeing how what is said about God walks right through the Gospel. So in John chapter number 6, verse number 5, it says, when Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, now, okay, so let me set the stage for you here. They're out and Jesus is teaching the people. There's a huge number of people. You're going to find out it's more than 5,000 real soon. So he's out there, and Jesus says to Philip, you've got to really respect the humor, the teachable moments, the creativity of Jesus in this situation. I love it. So he says to Philip, where are we going to buy bread for these people? I know it says where shall we, but it's the same thing as where are we going to. Where are we going to buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he, talking about Jesus, already had in mind what he was going to do. So he already knows that we got all these people, and there's no way that Philip's going to come up with a solution. But he says to Philip, hey, what are we going to do? Go ahead, give it a shot, Philip. And so Philip answers, listen, 8 months' wages wouldn't buy enough bread for each of these people to have a bite. So like if I had saved up 8 months' wages, I can't even give every one of these people a bite, let alone feed them. In other words, Philip is saying, I don't know. And you know how I said at the beginning of the message, like, I'm more and more coming to the point where whenever it's like, hey, what's the solution? I don't know. I'm following God. I don't know. Like, I don't have the answer. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, and you got to wonder whether he's being like sarcastic at this point or whether he's like, hey, I got a plan here. I don't know which one it is. So Andrew speaks up and he's like, hey, we got this boy. He has 5 small barley loaves. There's supposed to be an L there. And 2 small fish. How far will they go among so many? And again, I don't know if he's being sarcastic, like, hey, you asked Philip for a plan. I got a plan. We got 5 small barley loaves. We got 2 fish. Let's try to feed them with that. Again, humor. Jesus is like, all right, that'll work. Have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place. The men sat down, about 5,000 of them. Jesus then took the loaves. How many loaves does he have? He has 5. Are they big loaves? No, it said that they were 5 small loaves. So he has the people sit down. He gives thanks. He distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. How many people were seated? It says 5,000 men. By the time you would add the women and the children, there are a lot of people. So he said, hey, just start distributing. He did the same with the fish. And so everybody got 1 bite, like Philip was hoping. Like, if we have 8 months' wages, everybody would be able to maybe they'd have a bite. So Jesus gave everybody a bite, right? No. It says when they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Now, I can't do something like that. And if you're sitting here thinking you can, you're nuts. I can't take 5 little loaves and feed my family. They're hungry most of the time. Listen, God can provide in ways that we can't. Things that God can do, we cannot do. When we're trying to understand God in the context of relationship, I want you to know this. You're going to come to a point in your life when you are not going to have the answer. I know teenagers, you might be at a place where you think you have all the answers. You know, I see, Gavin, I see your posts every once in a while, and like you started out the season with the football team, and first game your quarterback gets hurt, right? Now, if you could have like made things happen the way you wanted, would that have happened? No. And then what? The last game, Another, what's that? Your backup quarterback gets hurt. And you come to realize that even for things so simple as a football game, we can't provide health. Even with the best doctors around, even with the greatest medical staffs, like we can't keep even professional athletes completely healthy. So says the Browns quarterbacks. I don't know. Sorry, I had to do it. Hey, you're on number 3, all right? Maybe this one will stay healthy for a couple of weeks. I won't guarantee it, but maybe. We come to realize we can't even control simple things such as a sports program, let alone the complexities of life, right? And so we need to go to understand, we need to get this understanding of Jehovah Jireh, the God who can provide, the God who will provide. Now it's interesting. Whenever Abraham said Jehovah Jireh, he didn't say, oh, God has provided. He actually uses a future term. The Lord will provide. Because he had the faith to say that, yes, he did it in this instance, but I know that in my life he's going to continue to do it. And so I'm going to ask you today, will you go to Jehovah Jireh? Will you go to the one who is present to provide for you? I'm going to ask you to do much the same as you did last week. I asked you to do last week, and that's just to pause and reflect. I want to ask you this. In what area of your life do you need Jehovah Jireh? Do you need God to provide for you emotionally? Do you need God to provide for you financially? Do you need God to provide for your family? Do you have kids that you've been praying for, maybe adult children? And you say, I need the Lord to provide for them in ways that I can't. Even if you have young children, teenagers, you might say, I need God to provide their deepest spiritual needs, because as a father, as a mother, I want to guide them in the ways of the Lord, but I realize I need to turn them over to God. So I want you to just reflect. And many of you have a Connect card, a worship program. If you want to jot it down there, that's great. The purpose is this, folks. You don't come here every week to hear me say a few funny things and open up the Bible and teach you a couple of things. At least I hope that's why you don't. I hope you don't come for that. I trust you come each and every week because we're going to have opportunity to see from God's Word maybe something new or something that you've known before but you need solidified in your life. So I ask you, what do you need to trust Jehovah Jireh for today? I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to actually grab Jenny's mic. And I know that sometimes it's easier just to keep those things to yourself. Let me ask you a question. How many of you were encouraged by Jenny's testimony earlier today? There's something about understanding that we're not the only ones walking through life and maybe having struggles. There's something about being able to hear somebody else say, you know what? I need God to provide for me emotionally this week. You know what? I need God to provide for me when I have this test this week. You know what? I need God. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this microphone, and I'm going to pray, and then, if you will, they're going to play softly in the background. And I just want you to walk up, grab the microphone, and just state to everybody, here's how I need Jehovah Jireh this week. I know this area of my life, and I just need Jehovah Jireh to provide for me. In your testimony of saying, you know what, I don't have all the answers, I need Jehovah Jireh, we'll let others know as well, because they might be sitting there saying, I need him, I need him. And I think we sang that, Lord, I need you, oh, I need. So often we think we got it all together. I think it's Jeremy that has it on today. No perfect people allowed. And the reason that no perfect people are allowed here with the asterisk except Jesus is because none of us have it all figured out, folks. So I'm going to invite you to just come and just to say, 30 seconds or less, here's how I need Jehovah Jireh.